I know it's almost becoming like boring to talk about all the ways in which this criminal piece of shit violates the law and violates the Constitution on a daily basis. It's not even an exaggeration to say that he does it on a daily basis. He does. And, you know, one of the things that we've talked about before many times, every time I think about it, the scope of the violation, of the constitutional violation, and it's a violation of such a fundamental nature that it really blows my mind that no one seems to care. And that is these tariffs. And not just the tariffs themselves, but what he is doing, the additional constitutional violations that he's doing on top of the tariffs. These constitutional violations, they're just one on top of another. One violation begets another, any one of which is an impeachable offense. But let's take the tariffs. So the tariffs are completely illegal. As you know, the Constitution gives the sole authority to impose tariffs, like any other tax, because a tariff is nothing more than a tax. It gives the sole authority for imposing those to Congress. Only Congress can impose tariffs. And yet Donald Trump did it unilaterally. And we're going to find out what the Supreme Court has to say about it. His tariffs have already been ruled unconstitutional by lower courts, but we all know that this is ultimately going to be decided by the Supreme Court. And these tariffs are a constitutional violation of the most fundamental kind. It is a clear violation of separation of powers, which is, of course, where the Constitution separates out the three main functions of government. So in Article 1, you have Congress given the legislative power. In Article 2, you have the president given the executive power. And in Article 3, the courts are given the judicial power. And the idea, which is the most fundamental aspect of our constitutional system, is that you take these three main functions of government and you separate them out among three different branches so that those different functions of government cannot all be exercised by one branch, or more importantly, one person. But here you have the President of the United States stealing from Congress the power to legislate, the power to impose taxes that he does not have. He is usurping congressional authority and doing it unilaterally. Now, is the Supreme Court going to do the right thing and uphold the lower courts and say this is flatly unconstitutional? Maybe, but honestly, I'd be surprised. I think that the court has decided that as much as they possibly can, they're just going to give this guy everything they want, that he wants. Because I think that they're afraid that if they rule against him, he's just going to do it anyway. And if the president starts ignoring rulings of the Supreme Court, then the Supreme Court has no legitimacy because it can't enforce its own orders. And the Supreme Court will be nothing more than a paper tiger at that point. And their legitimacy completely eroded. And so I think that, and that's just a guess, but I think that's what's going on. But what I think the Supreme Court is going to say is because, or if they rule in his favor, what are they going to say? They have to have some sort of rationale, right? Well, I think what they're going to say is two things. One, they're going to say, well, there's a federal statute that delegates to the president certain emergency powers. Now, admittedly, the power to impose tariffs is not part of the statute, but the president has broad discretion in areas of foreign affairs. So we're going to say that because the president has, you know, all this foreign affairs authority and there's this emergency statute, we're going to just put those two together and say, yeah, it's okay, you can do this. So that's what I think they're going to do as far as their rationale. But okay, so it's flatly unconstitutional, regardless of what this damn Supreme Court does. Because as far as I'm concerned, the Supreme Court is a rogue court at this point. They don't give a damn about upholding the Constitution. That much is clear. But beyond the fact that this is so flagrantly unconstitutional, look what he's doing on top of the tariffs. So he imposes these tariffs. That alone is unconstitutional. Then, as a result of his tariffs, the farmers, for just one example, the farmers in this country are getting devastated, especially like soybean farmers, for example. The major consumer of American soybean production was China. I said was because they no longer are. Once Trump imposed these massive tariffs on China, China said, screw you, we'll get our soybeans from Brazil and Argentina, which is what they're doing. So the soybean farmers in the United States got completely screwed. And so now Trump is talking about bailing them out again, because he did the same thing in the first term. And so these farmers, who pretty much all voted for Trump, are now hurting. So Trump's going to come in with a massive bailout. They're talking about a bailout to the tune of $50 billion or more. But where's he going to get that money? Well, the reports are that he's just going to take some of that tariff revenue and give it to the farmers. Now that in and of itself is another violation of the Constitution. The appropriations clause of the Constitution says the president can't spend a penny from the national treasury unless Congress has authorized him to do so. And of course, Congress has not. And I doubt that he's even going to ask Congress for authorization. He's just going to say, well, they're my tariffs, and I don't have to go through Congress. I'll just do it myself. Both of these things, the violation on the front end, imposing the tariffs, violating separation of powers, stealing Congress's authority, for any other president, that would get them impeached and removed from office. I mean, that alone, there has been no greater violation of the Constitution before this president ever. Okay, it doesn't get, you don't get a bigger violation than the president stealing Congress's authority and imposing taxes unilaterally. Just as a constitutional matter, it doesn't get any more flagrant than that. Then on top of that, he's going to steal their appropriations authority? Again, usurping the power of Congress and illegally spending money to bail out the farmers. Not only is he spending money that hasn't been authorized, there's been no law passed by Congress saying that the farmers get a bailout. Regardless of the appropriations and where this money comes from, I mean, it's just insane. It's just... And is there any real discussion of this in the media? No, they'll report on it. They'll say, yeah, Trump's talking about bailing out the farmers. No conversation in the media about how friggin' flagrantly illegal and unconstitutional it is. Nothing. And do you think the American people, most of the American people, have any idea that it's unconstitutional? Oh, fucking of course not. You think they understand the appropriations clause or separation of powers? Separation of powers? They can't even name the three branches of government, for crying out loud, the overwhelming majority of them. You want to know how you get into a lawless country like this? You know how you get to this place? By having a population that is so fucking dumbed down, they don't even know the basics of how their country works. So of course they're not going to give a shit if a president violates the law and the Constitution. They neither know about the Constitution nor give a damn about it. So why would they care if a president violates it? As a constitutional lawyer, this all just makes my fucking head explode. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rant. Talk to you again soon.